everybody. My name is Crane Hearn. I am a sports referee along with my wife and, ironically, my daughter. We have a family-based business based at home, and we officiate basketball, volleyball, high school, college, done a little bit of girls lacrosse, even done one game of baseball and one game of dodgeball, believe it or not. The conclusion we've come to is that we are indoor officials, which means we don't like doing outdoor sports because we cannot control the weather or the environment, and we'd rather be able to be more in control of that. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is officiating from the standpoint of parents. One thing I want you to keep in mind is parents take the game home with them. What does that mean? I've seen parents get very emotional in games. Basically, I've been officiating over 3 decades now, about 33, 34 years. Sometimes when you get into a profession and you love it, you just lose track of time. So I'm not exactly sure I'd have to do the math, but at least 33 to 34 years. And I've noticed that parents take the game home with them. Officials, not so much. Coaches definitely take the game home with them. Why? Coaches a lot of times are parents, and they take the game home with them. I'm going to focus on basketball today. Why? Because that's one of the most highly contested, one of the most emotional sports out there. Part of the reason it's so emotional because it is indoors. It's played in close proximity. The coaches are standing right behind the officials as we run up down the court, or if we stop and make a foul call, what have you. And on top of that, it's a contact sport. So looking at basketball, and I want you to ask yourself this question, folks. What do you think is the most difficult level for an official to officiate? What level is the hardest level to referee, in your opinion? I've asked people that question over time. I get answers from everything from the men's leagues. Some of you out there may play basketball. Maybe you played in high school or college and you want to continue playing the game, and you play in local men's leagues at the YMCA, youth organizations, churches, what have you. And to that answer, I would say, that's a challenging level to officiate, but probably not the most competitive that I've seen in my career. And by the way, my wife and my daughter, we also, in our businesses, we also run a referee training school, and that's the name of it, Referee Training School, LLC, located in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And what we do is we recruit and train people to become sports officials in areas of basketball and volleyball. We also run another company called Hoosier 3-on-3, where we host basketball, 3-on-3 basketball tournaments and leagues for kids grades 3 through 12. So getting back to my question, what do you think is the most challenging level to officiate? I ask that question because most people, they try to guess it, and some get it right, some don't. And again, this is my perspective and the perspective of myself, my wife, my daughter, and all those people we've trained, which is a significant number. So I ask that question, and some people will say, well, maybe it's middle school. Others say high school players. And they don't know for sure, but they're making a guess. Maybe in your mind you've come up with those groups. And then some people say, well, girls are the hardest to officiate. Others say, well, it's got to be the boys because they're so competitive and they're just disrespectful. That I agree with. But the hardest level that we found, believe it or not, and listen to me clearly what I'm saying now. 3rd through 6th graders, parents, and the grandparents. Now you might ask, well, why does he add in parents and grandparents? Because as I said at the beginning of my talk, parents take the game home with them. Kids do too in a sense, but kids take it home in terms of what could I have done better? How can I play better defense? How can I get my coach to let me play more? How can I do this? And they're usually focused on improving themselves. Parents, grandparents, coaches who happen to be parents or grandparents take the game home in a different way. And they're asking questions such as, well, why didn't the referee do this? Or why didn't they call this? Or why did they do it this way? I don't like this. And they take the game home with them in a different way. Got a little story I want to share with you. Something that happened to me a few years ago. There's a place in Fort Wayne called Spies Fieldhouse. It doesn't exist anymore in terms of basketball. They've turned it into a pickleball facility. You all know pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America right now, and they don't need referees, so we don't get beat up too badly there. Well, this was years ago, and a coach comes up to me and he says, "Hey, ref." And, we get approached like that from time to time. So I'm thinking, I don't know whether it's going to be good or whether it's going to be bad, but let me hear this person out before I respond. And this was in between my games. And I said, "Yeah, what can I do for you, sir?" And he goes, "You remember me?" I looked at him. "No, sir, I don't." He says, I'm serious. "Do you remember me?" I said, "No, I don't remember you." He goes, "It's okay. You can tell me you remember." I looked and said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I don't remember you." And he goes, "You're being serious?" "Yeah, I have no reason to lie. I'm being dead serious. I don't remember you. Who are you?" And I said, "I don't mean that disrespectfully, but no, I don't. Who are you?" He goes, "You really don't remember me?" And I looked at him, I said, "I really don't remember you." And he goes, "I coached here last year. I was coaching a tournament, and you were reffing. And I had some things to say about the way you reffed." And I'm thinking, well, this is not going in a good direction. Okay, so I'm listening, and he goes, "Yeah, and I guess you got tired of it, and you tossed me. You threw me out. You ejected me." And I looked at him, and I said, "Okay." And he goes, "And you don't remember that?" I said, look, dude, I do hundreds of games. I've been reffing almost 30 years. And you have no idea how many games I see in a weekend, during the week, all levels, from little kids all the way up to semi-pro. I've done college. I said, by the way, I didn't tell you guys, but I also do wheelchair basketball. I said, I'm not telling you that, sir, to impress you. I'm telling you that to impress upon you that I see literally hundreds of people in the arena of sports, specifically in basketball, per year. And so I don't mean to insult you, but I'm sorry, I just don't remember that. He goes, and he had a smile on his face. I thought, okay, good, this is not going in a bad direction. And he says, "So you tossed me, you threw me out." And he says, "I made a big fuss about it, and you don't remember that?" I said, "Well, no, I really don't. But again," he says, "Do you toss a lot of people?" I said, "No, I really don't. As my career has progressed, I used to be a young, fiery official. Now, don't get it twisted. There was a day that if you got on my nerves, I'd tech you and throw your rump out in a heartbeat." I said, "But no, I've kind of settled down. I think everybody does. When you've been in a profession for a while, you learn how to communicate with people in a different way." I said, "So no, I don't eliminate a lot of people, or eject a lot of people, or throw people out. I don't do that a lot. I don't have to. I can usually find a way to communicate in a way that keeps us both engaged in the game." I said, "But that is because I've made a lot of mistakes in the past, and I guess in your case, that might have been a mistake throwing you out." He goes, "I don't think so." And I said, "Oh, that's an interesting response. What do you mean you don't think so?" He says, "Well," he said, "after you threw me out, I went and asked some other officials about the play, about the rule, and they told me that the way you called it was correct, and that I was wrong, and I didn't know that particular rule. So," he said, "I just want to come up to you and let you know this whole thing is about me coming to you and apologizing for the way I acted." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that, because usually we don't get parents that have been disqualified from a contest to come back and apologize. Usually they feel like they're right." And I said, "I have to commend you that you went and talked to some other officials." I said, "Talking about me behind my back is not a good thing." We kind of laughed about that, but I said, "But the thing about it is, a lot of people will go about thinking that they're right. And what's interesting is most people," I said, "don't take this personally, but take it personally. Most people don't know the rules. And to be honest with you, most coaches, they don't care to know all the rules. And the parents, they don't give a about the rules. They just want their child, their son or their daughter, or their sons or their daughters if they got multiple players, they just want them to win every contest, get every call, every time, at both ends of the floor." And I said, I even talked to a coach one time. I was traveling to another city. It was a high school game, and I went up to the coach and I said, before the game, I said, Coach, I heard something. I want you to let me know if this is true or not. And him and I had worked together before. I'd done his games in the past, and I said, I was just told recently that coaches want every call, every time, at both ends of the floor. Is that true? And he looked at me, and he just got this blank look on his face. He goes, absolutely. Folks, I had to start laughing at that. And I laughed, and the coach didn't laugh very much. He just looked at me. He goes, what's the problem? I said, you realize that's not realistic. That's not possible, right? And he goes, you didn't ask me if it was possible. You asked me if that's what we want. He said, that's absolutely what I said. So you're telling me that you want every call, every time at both ends of the floor, and he wants every call, every time at both ends of the floor. He goes, yeah, if you go down there and ask him, he's going to say the same thing. I said, how do you guys handle it when you don't get that because you can't get that? He goes, well, yeah. He says, yeah, Crane, we know we can't get it, but that's why, some of us will act a certain way because we want you to give us that. I said, but have you ever seen a ref change his call? And he goes, well, he said, not you. I said, well, why would I change my call if I'm sure what I called? He goes, so I got a question for you. Are you sure of the things you call? I said, I've been doing this long enough that if I blow my whistle, I'd say 9 times out of 10, I'm positive about what I thought I saw. Now I say what I thought I saw because the game has sped up to the point, especially on the varsity and the college level, where we might think we saw something and maybe it didn't happen. I said, I've called what we call phantom fouls. And he goes, so what you're telling me is you've called fouls and there was no contact. I said, right, because I thought I saw contact. And then I realized the shooter's on the line and he's kind of smiling and looking at the guy that I thought fouled him. They kind of smile at each other like the ref got that wrong. I said, so what I'll do is I'll go up next to the kid that I just called a foul on and say, hey, did you hit him? And he'll go, no, I didn't touch him, ref. Well, I got that wrong, didn't I? Yeah, ref, you missed that. Well, you know what? I'm going to try to do better next time because I thought sure you hit him, but that's my bad. And he'll go, that's cool, ref. And I said, I've learned to admit my mistakes. But when that gentleman, that father, was talking to me about I had disqualified him from the game, during that conversation, I said, well, look, I said, you were dad, right? He goes, yeah, I was coaching my son. I said, that's a hard job, to be able to coach your kids, to keep your head during the game, to not take the game home with you in a negative way, and to not blame the official. I said, that I couldn't do your job. He goes, well, ref, I definitely couldn't do your job. And I said, well, I love what I do. I can tell you love what you do. And I have to commend you for coming up to me and speaking to me like this and apologizing, because to be honest with you, I really don't remember. He says, you really don't remember? I said, no. And he says, you don't disqualify that many people? I said, no. Number one, I don't take the game home with me like parents do. He goes, wow, that's profound. I said, I don't. Think about it. I do game after game after game after game after game, and I see player after player, coach after coach, fan after fan. I said, sometimes I see the same people, but I travel a lot. I said, I've refereed as far away as Hawaii. My wife and I went and did a boys varsity game, tournament in Hawaii together. It was a chance of a lifetime. We took our daughter. She was too young to officiate at the time. We took my sister, and I said, that was the experience of a lifetime. And we loved it. We were there for a week, and we got a chance to referee 8 different boys varsity basketball teams, 7 of which came in from the States just like we did, or from the home mainland to Hawaii to play. I said, I've done so much basketball. I love it. I said, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. I ask some people sometimes, do you love what you do? And they'll go, well, yeah. What I do is cool. Yeah, it's all right. No. You ask me what I do, I'm saying, yeah, I love it. I look forward to Mondays. I look forward to Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday, and Sunday. I love what I do. My wife and I jokingly but seriously say sometimes when we're stressed out, we gotta go get some therapy. And our version of therapy is we gotta go find a basketball court to run up and down and referee. That's our therapy. That de-stresses us, compresses us, and gets us back to balance. So I'm talking to his dad, this coach, and I said, again, I'm very, very impressed with the fact you came up to me and spoke to me. And don't harbor any animosity because I don't remember the situation. He goes, man. He said, you don't remember that? He said, I got mad respect for that. I said, well, I don't try to harbor, but I love what I do, so I don't harbor things. I said, now don't get me wrong. There are certain coaches I see on a regular basis and certain fans, when I see them, I'm thinking to myself, oh, man, I got to deal with these people. I said, but I got one family in mind, and yes, it's a whole family, and they do act, I'll just be nice and say they act in a way that's unprofessional. Or what's the word we use? It doesn't come to mind right now, but people act a certain way and unsporting. That's the word I'm looking for. They are very unsporting. And they're like that all the time. The dad has been coaching for years. The mom comes to the game. She's more into it than the dad is. And I've talked to them on the side and said, you guys, and their father, her father-in-law, his dad. I said, you guys, I said, I got to keep it real with you guys. They said, yeah, I said, when y'all on the sideline, y'all like the dang gone fool. And the dad, I didn't know if he was going to be insulted. He looks at me and he goes, well, Crane, we're very intense. I said, from your perspective, you're intense. From an official's perspective, y'all acting a fool. And he goes, well, he said, I don't take that personal, because he said, to me, that's kind of a compliment. That means I'm really into it. And I said, wow, I never looked at it like that. You really, really, really want to win every game, get every call at both ends of the floor all the time. He goes, absolutely I do. And when you don't give it to me, I got to give it to you because you didn't give me what I wanted. We kind of laughed about it. So when we see each other, and he's been coaching for years, I've been reffing for years, we see each other, it's just kind of a friendly embrace, because I know that he is so dedicated to his side of the sport, which is coaching, and he knows I'm dedicated to my side of the court, which is officiating. So we get along, but I think, again, that comes down to being a veteran, whether I'm a veteran referee or whether you're a veteran fan, or whether some of you might be a veteran coach, or some of you might be veteran players and you just are dedicated to playing the game on whatever level. I think that first of all, we all have to decide where we're going to be, in which of those categories we're going to be in. And then, from my perspective, I'm going, okay, we can all do what we do. You coach the kids, you cheer for the kids, you play the game, and then let me officiate. And I'll do my best to do my job if you do your best to do your job, but let's be respectful of each other. So again, when I'm going back to this dad who was coaching and said I had ejected him, disqualified him, I said, look, one thing that you and I look at differently. He goes, what's that? I said, I didn't disqualify you. He goes, yes, you did. I said, no, I didn't disqualify you. You disqualified yourself. As an official, my job is not to go out looking for trouble. My job is to respond. And we have this thing called AIP, answer questions, ignore comments, penalize stupidity. I said, now, I learned that on a college rank. So my job isn't to go headhunting and looking for problems. If you come to the gym and you say something or behave in a certain way, and I recognize from my own experience that this person is probably going to be a problem. For instance, players, the ones that are on the court fouling everybody on a regular basis, we're trying to talk them out of, and they're still, I said, we call those game interrupters. Well, guess what? There can be game interrupting coaches as well. You may have an assistant on your bench who's over there saying things in a high school game, and most assistants realize in high school, they're not allowed to talk to the official. And the coach looked at me, he says, they're not? I said, see, that's what I'm saying. You're a head coach and you don't even know that simple rule. And he goes, well, I really didn't. I said, there's a lot of rules that people don't know we work by. And so I said, just like police officers out there on the street, they know laws that a lot of people are not familiar with, simple little laws that we as the populace or the people they serve, we're supposed to be aware of those. And just because we aren't aware, that doesn't mean a police officer still shouldn't do his job. So I'm a court cop. And my job is to enforce the rules, and plain and simple, when I'm training people, I said, look, my job, and you as a new official, your job is to make sure each team has an equal opportunity to win the game. That's our job. So if this coach over here has something to say, and it's disrespectful, and this coach hears it, they want every call, every time at both ends of the floor. They're going to play that probably and try to get me to go over here and penalize this coach for what they said or did. I've got to be balanced and realize my job is to make sure each team has equal opportunity to win the game. So I can't get personally caught up into that. AIP. Answer questions, ignore comments, penalize stupidity. Got to keep that in my head. I said, so Dad, when I was involved with you disqualifying yourself, I did what I was supposed to do. And then I went back to work. And then I went on to my next game, and my next game, and my next game. And here you are a year later saying you're surprised that I didn't remember you. Well, that's because I'm dialed in on the game I'm supposed to be doing, and I don't have time to remember the past. Now, if I see you again and it's recent and I recognize you, yeah, that'll come back to my mind. But I'm going to go up to you the same way. Hey, coach, I'm going to shake your hand. I'm hoping we're going to start over. And I hope you don't take it personally because, again, as I said when I first started, parents, a lot of them, take the game home with them. As officials, we're trained not to. So I work hard at that. I work hard at not taking the game home with me. Now, when I do get home, the advantage I have is I could be sitting there talking to my spouse about the game I had. And my daughter, if she's visiting, she could be there talking about the game she just had. And yes, just like any other profession, we're sitting there talking about what happened, who were the problem players, who were the problem coaches. But if the coach doesn't come up on a regular basis, he's not going to be on our radar and we're going to go out there looking for problems from her. We're not going to do that. Players? No. But if you are constantly, and there are some players in men's leagues in our town, and there are some high school players who have the attention of the officials, but they have the attention of most officials. Why? Because they take the game home with them and they bring that same attitude back to the next game and they become game interrupters. And when you become a game interrupter, well, we may have to eliminate that interruption. So I just wanted you guys to think about this tonight. Again, do you take the game home with you? And if you do you take the game home with you in a positive way or a negative way? And remember what I said earlier, the hardest group for us to officiate, people in my circle, the officials in my circle, we will always say third graders through sixth graders, the parents and the grandparents, because those folks, a lot of them, don't understand the culture of the game. In third grade, they don't realize that they just gotten their kid, some of them don't realize they just gotten their kid into a contact sport, a sport that may not always go his or her way. And keep in mind, folks, third grade through sixth grade, most of those kids don't care about the wins and losses. Yes, it's in their minds, but it's not a high priority for them. They're just happy to be performing, especially they're happy to be performing instead of you, the parents and grandparents. They're happy to be playing in front of you to show you what I can do. Think about it. Your kid is at home. Look, mommy, look, daddy, look at what I can do. My son did that when he was young. Daddy, look what I can do. Took the ball and shot the ball. And I looked at him, and I looked at the guy I was talking to, and I said, my son's not crazy. And we kind of laughed about it. And he said, Daddy, Daddy. I said, what are you doing? He says, watch again. And he shot the ball. And I looked at him. I said, yeah, that's good. And I looked at my buddy, and I said, I have no idea what he's doing. He says, Crane, I know what he's doing. I said, what? He goes, man, I played pro ball. I know exactly what he's doing. I said, what is he doing? He goes, listen to him. He said, Reggie, do it again. Reggie shot the ball. I looked at him. I said, okay, Reg, good. And I looked at my buddy, and I said, I don't get it. He goes, Crane, he's trying to lose his shadow. Think about that. This kid was in middle school, and he wanted to lose his shadow. And so he looked at, he said, Daddy, watch. And he did it again. I said, that's good, man. What are you doing? He goes, I'm trying to lose my shadow. And it matched exactly what my buddy who played pro ball told me that that's what he was doing. And for those of you who don't know, yeah, my son did play pro ball, but Dad only played college, and I didn't understand what he was doing. But I do understand one thing. He was enjoying himself. He was having fun. And he wanted to impress Dad that he was trying to lose his shadow. So again, do you take the game home with you? And if you do you take it home in a positive or negative way? I want you to keep that in mind, because your kids, they take the game home in a different way. If you're going home with a negative in your mind, they're going home with a positive. How can I impress mommy? How can I impress daddy? How can I impress auntie? How can I impress grandpa, grandma, and uncle? That's what's in their minds. They're out there having fun, folks. The question is, are you having fun? And if you're taking the game home in a negative way, I'm wondering how much fun you're having. My name is Crane Hearn. Thank you for your time.